Well, hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm drinking coffee out of my Bald Explorer mugs. By the way, quick plug, they are available if you want to get a Bald Explorer mug from the Bald Explorer website, baldexplorer.com, and just follow the link. Lovely cup of coffee on the day I'm recording this in Worthing on the southeast of England, down by the coast. A wet and miserable day so far, and I believe we've got more of that to come, which is a shame because a number of us were going to go camping on another camping trip, and I know that many of the audience enjoy our van life camping episodes, but it's all fallen apart. One of the couple are disappearing up to Yorkshire. Another one's had to go and work in London, and it's all become, and the weather is not going to be great or something like that, and so we've shunted it. There's a possibility that we'll go out in deepest, darkest November, but it might be a bit cold in the middle of November. And of course the nights are drawing in, so there may not be so much of the camping going on for a while. However, I think more of the day trips potentially would be good. Finding somewhere, especially on a nice day, to have a cup of tea, have a meal, cook out, even in the cold, would be good. But even if it's just Julia and I, when we can. Julia's time at the moment is quite limited because of the children and schooling and stuff like that. But when she's got a bit more time, it would be grand. Anyway, welcome along to my friendly little chinwag chat on my vlog. I'm not out today, as I say, it's a bit miserable, but also, hang on, let me have a slurp. I got a bit of a cold. I gave a talk yesterday. I don't think this is where I got the cold, because I was just getting, you know, it's that time of year, isn't it? I don't normally get colds, so it's been a bit of a pig, really, but there you are. It's just a nasal thing, it's just a drippy nose, so if you suddenly see me pull out my old handkerchief and have a good old snort into that, you'll know why. Bit of a sore throat, but I think, again, it's only a 24 to 48 hour thing. It seems to be passing already. Last night it sort of came on, I felt a bit, you know, lousy. And then I don't take medication. I don't really take any of that sort of stuff, paracetamol, unless it's really severe. I trust my immune system to work. It's what it's designed for. It's how I believe that the human body will repair itself pretty much most of the time. So I don't rely on all of that. I rely on good quality breathing and eating good quality food. I know that all sounds a bit, you know, breathing. Well, we all breathe, but yes, but we all mainly shallow breathe, and we mostly breathe through, a lot of people breathe through their mouths. That's not very good. You should be breathing through your nose, and you shouldn't be taking as many breaths in a minute. A lot of people will breathe up to something like 20 breaths a minute. Here we go, just going to give my nose a bit of a honky blow. There it is, nice. But if you can reduce your breathing down, actually slower, longer, it is a lot more healthy because you're aerating the blood better. And also carbon dioxide, which is part of what we're made up of, is very important, that it is absorbed and ejected correctly. So it's a fascinating thing. I have got on the shelf Keith the Thief recommended a book called Breath. I forget the author's name. If I remember, I'll stick it on the screen. Well worth reading. Anyway, that was all by the by. Didn't intend to say any of that. I had an accident the other day. I had an accident, yes. One of my lovely viewers very kindly gave me this G-Ramps, his name was. He gave me this beautiful lens. It's a Sigma lens, 18 to 35. It's a beautiful lens. I love it, really love it, very generous. Unfortunately, while I was filming the other day, when I was doing my seance vlog, it must have been fate, or a ghost didn't like the idea of it, and I accidentally knocked the tripod. The camera toppled over. This does make the camera quite front heavy. Came crashing down and it smashed. It looks like it's all okay, but this bit here, I don't want to take it off. although I do need to take it off. But this bit here has snapped right off, came off completely. I pushed it back on, now I can't get the damn thing off. And I want to be able to glue it back in. It will mean that the electronics on the inside no longer work to operate the autofocus, but the manual focus and the aperture all work fine. And if only I can glue this bit on. This is the bit that attaches to the camera, so it's very essential, but it's taking all the weight and it's all held on this bit here. And I don't know if you can see that. This is all loose, but it just falls off. It's only being held back now, I know, by a little tiny circuit board on the inside of that, which all the ribbon connections have come off. It's very difficult, and it's probably not going to work, especially if I glue it. And I need some very special glue. Thank you to the person who suggested a company to go and do it, to have it repaired. There may be somewhere that I can send that off. I think about new, this would cost about £1,000. I've seen some second-hand from 500, looked a bit worn and a bit knackered. About 700 should get one in reasonable condition. So I'm thinking about that, but that's a lot of money, £700. But it is a beautiful lens. I've used them on the videos. It connects to my Canon camera, but I'm using a different camera today. So that was a bit of a shame. And you know, what do you do? I have been baking bread. Back to baking bread. I came off bread at the beginning of this year after I was seeing a YouTube video actually saying try not eating bread for 30 days and see what happens. Well, to be honest with you, I didn't feel any fitter. I didn't really notice very much, but I have noticed that I lost a bit of weight quite quickly from not eating bread, and particularly learning about the type of grain. And I made videos about this, the wheat, the commercial wheat, which you think bread's got to be all right, but the Chorley wood process for speeding up the production of making bread from the commercial wheat, so that you end up with this commercial bread. And the whole process of taking out all the goodness, basically, of the wheat, speeding it up, has made bread, commercial bread, not good, not healthy at all. Now, I know people will disagree with this, and I know that artisan bread is more expensive, but it's much cheaper if you can get perhaps, say, heritage wheat and make it yourself, bake your own bread. It's very therapeutic, and I did do a bit of that, and I was doing very well. And I bought all sorts of different heritage wheats, some what is it called? Einkorn? I've forgotten the name of it now. Spelt and rye, and emmer, which is a wheat-based corn, as a grain. Fantastic. And I had some success, and then I was having a series of flops. And you know what it's like? You go, oh my goodness, I can no longer cook bread. What's happened? I can no longer do it. Well, months went past and I was looking for alternatives, and I was looking at a crisp bread. But again, it was a processed product. But I looked at the ingredients and it only said the one ingredient, rye. And I thought, well, it's got to be okay, surely, because it's rye. But it was then pointed out to me by good old Nigel Sadler, who's a bit of a geeky chap, and he knows his stuff and has looked into this. And he said, yes, but although it is only one ingredient, in order to get it to the point where it will press and make up a solid, crisp bread, it has to be heated up to an enormous temperature. And in that process, it's changed the consistency of the molecules in the rye. And as a result of that, it's not actually very healthy. It could even be carcinogenic. Excuse me whilst I have one of my lovely cups here. So I thought, oh, right, I don't want to, in my pursuit of being healthy and staying fit, I don't want to inadvertently get some form of cancer from by just changing my my dietary habits. So I've gone back and I made a svelte loaf, and it was very successful. but it was coming out of the tin too much. The tin seemed too small, or the yeast was bubbling it up, but it was very lovely, and it was tasted, and Julia had some, and we had a laugh with it, if you can have a laugh with a loaf of bread. Anyway, I realised I still had a little bit of rye left last night, and I've cooked up a loaf of bread. It's much smaller than your commercial loaf, and it's a lot more compact, and it's a bit heavier. So you don't need too much, but it is more like bread used to be in the old days, without these modern breads and modern the Chorley wood process, which pumps more air into it through the type of wheat and the way it reacts to the yeast and the water. And so it is more heavier. You don't need as much, and it's, you know, it's different. It is different, but it's lovely. So you get smaller loaves, and it's very tasty. So I'm very pleased with that. That came out okay. So that was nice. I baked that just before I went off to give my talk, which was at a cine club. A cine club, well, I say a cine club. It used to be a cine club. Of course, now it's a video club, an amateur video club that I used to be a member of 30 years ago. And they meet on a Wednesday night, and very lovely people. And I used to go there with my dad back in the days when VHS was a thing and Super 8 was sort of dying out, and VHS was a standard thing. And then High 8 had come in on tape, you know. And I think then VHS-C, and there was another one which I used to use in the commercial world a little bit later on. Anyway, all on tape. And my dad became a member, and I became a member. And in fact, I started up the magazine for the club called Freeze Frame. And up until recently, this same magazine that I originally started up and edited on an old Dotmex printer was still in existence. They now put their newsletter online, so you don't have a printed newsletter. But I remember being the editor of that and trying to get people to send in pictures and to send in text to sort of put the thing together as a little booklet. And then I would be writing stuff about filmmaking and all that nonsense. And it was good fun. And then over time I left. Well, in fact, I left Worthing. That was the reason I left the club, because I'd gone up to London, and I was doing. No, hang on. I'm getting myself confused, because I'd lived in Worthing. Well, it doesn't really matter. But anyway, I did leave the club. I had children, and I was doing other things, and the work that I was doing, the extra work, the performance work, the juggling, the unicycling, my whole thing took over, and I really didn't have any time for the club. But anyway, the chap called Brian, who originally started the club, who was there 30 years ago, he was there. I mean, he was sort of a middle-aged man, I suppose, when I was a member, and I thought, my goodness, is Brian still around? Is he still alive? And yes, in vibrant health. And it was such a joy to see and to meet the other newer members who are still of a reasonable age, and they're still doing the thing. So I gave a talk, a chat about what I'd been doing, about YouTube, my experiences in YouTube, the audiences of YouTube, the fact that you can reach to the whole world, that different people in different parts of the world can see you and hear you and appreciate you, or not, as the case may be. So that was fascinating, and exchanging ideas and views and all the sort of things that you do. The lovely Julia came along, and it was lovely to have her, the beautiful, lovely Julia, at my side, which was wonderful. And we enjoyed the company of all the wonderful people there. So that was fun. I used to do quite a few of these sort of impromptu talks at WI meeting, Women's Institute meetings, and other sort of groups and things, and was on a number of agencies. And in fact, I've stopped doing them a while ago. But it may be something I'll get back to doing again. It was all good fun. Time for another slurp of coffee, of course. Promote the old cups, why not? I had a lovely email from a lady called Kat. She'd heard one of my videos in which I was ruminating about what I could do with the YouTube channel. Now that I've ceased doing as many of the walks that I used to do, and the reason for that is, A, I have been to pretty much all the places of interest in Sussex, and B, that to go further afield and to continue that at the moment is too expensive for me. And although I have a van and can stay over and do many more, I sort of moved on a little bit from that. I would like to come back, but I'm sort of having a break so that I don't become stale, I suppose, from the walks. After 5 years of walking along different footpaths and going, there's an interesting heritage site, there's a tree, there's a lovely field, I felt that I was becoming incredibly repetitive and saying the same old nonsense. Now you may say, but Richard, that's what we like. We like you being repetitive and saying the same old nonsense, and that may well be that may be the case. So I want to be able to go back and explore more of England, but on trips and things which we love, but obviously not this time of year where the weather is unpredictable. We have short days, it's colder, it's not as desirable, and also, unless you get the right day with the trees looking beautiful with their golden browns and yellows and oranges and all of that, it can look very drab, and I don't want to show England in that light. I want to show it in the best possible light, that it looks lovely. However, of course, in certain places you'll have huge numbers of tourists and they often get in the way. So I had this wonderful email from this lady called Kat, who was saying, what I like about you, Richard, and one of the reasons we want you to succeed, which was a very nice thing for her to say, is your Englishness, the way you dress, she said. Your English speaking voice. She says you've got a very good, it might be a bit, at the moment, a bit groggy because of my cold, but she said, no, your interesting English voice, you sound almost posh, but you're not distant or arrogant in the way that perhaps some posh people are. You're not looking down. And I never think of myself as being particularly posh. In fact, when I was young, my mum used to say that her friends would say to her that every time I answered the phone and say, hello, I lived in Horsham at the time, Horsham 1234, whatever the telephone number was, they would say, oh, your son sounds so plummy. And I never really understood what she meant until she said, well, it's, it's like having a plum in your mouth. And I always found that as a very odd expression, because if you had a plum in your mouth, you'd be saying, hello, Horsham 1234, sorry, I can't speak at the moment, I've got a plum in my mouth. So I never really understood how having a plum in your mouth made you enunciate any better. But I've been blessed. I don't know why. I've been blessed, I think, because I listened all through my childhood and up until fairly recently to BBC Radio 4, and where they speak usually pretty well. Now they've become a little bit too biased and a bit too left-wing and in one camp for me. It used to be quite balanced, but they're no longer balanced, as a lot of the BBC is. And in fact, I've revoked my licence and I don't watch the BBC or any live broadcast at all these days. I don't have a television anymore, as you know. It became the idiot box, a place for idiots to sit there and just not do anything else. And I'd rather be creative or read and do things in that way. Anyway, so Kat said all these lovely things, and she was very nice and very generous and all of that, and said, but one of the things you should think about is teaching English, even if it's not doing an actual English channel, which is not probably what I would like to do, but to teach inadvertently, that you could make contact with people across the world who are eager, like the Romanians, the Brazilians, and various other people who want to get on. And English is a language that is universal now. It's global language. And I thought that was an interesting point. But she said it's particular with the British accent. That's what people want to learn, a native speaker. So you never know, it might be a good idea. And I'd be interested to know if people do watch my videos because of my diction and the way I say things. Although Julia, the lovely Julia, bless her socks, will continually tell me that you're saying this wrong. And so I'll say words. I've got this weird malaproposition that goes on where I'll say, instead of reprobates, I've grown up, because of my education has been so bad, I've grown up saying retrobates. To me, that sounds perfectly the right word to talk about, you know, some people who are a bit nefarious and what have you, or a bit dodgy. Those old retrobates. And it's not retro, but reprobates. So, and I have a number of these words which I get wrong, so I don't think I'd be very good at an English channel. Coming to the end of this video, and thank you for joining me, and I hope you've stayed throughout the duration, I wanted to say a big thank you to Mark Burgess, who sent me this. It says Unusual Tales, Richard Vobes. It's a workbook. It's a notebook, basically. And I've already started to write in it. So Mark, thank you so much. My other channel, Unusual, well, I've changed it back to Unusual Stories, because I found stories was a better search term for YouTube, but I may change it back to Unusual Tales now you've had it inscribed on this book. And I've already got an unusual tale which I am working on now, and I will be reading on that channel. So if you don't know that, I'll try and remember to put the link in the description. But thank you very much. In the past I had a different notebook which I was pretty much filling up, but it's nice to have this one with the sort of leather look feel. I don't know if it's real leather or is it vegan leather? Yeah, work that one out. Vegan leather. It's not leather, but it's... Anyway, thank you, Mark. Very much appreciate that. And more of those stories are to come. But that's it. Lenses, bread, lovely emails, speeches, and the Unusual Tales workbook. And of course, wonderful coffee mug available at baldexplorer.com. Thanks for joining us on the Friday here in... Is it Friday or is it Thursday? It's only Thursday. I don't know what I'm talking about. It's not even the end of the week, is it? Have a wonderful day, and I will catch up with you later on.